Our next speaker is Urška Krajnc from the Institute for Health and Environment, presenting insights into building a sustainable future through libraries. Urška Krajnc is an expert associate for sustainable development at the Institute for Health and Environment. She works in the field of climate change and air quality, with a strong focus on the importance of strategic communication in addressing these critical issues.
Zdaj pa med nami pozdravljam Urško Krajnc iz Inštituta za zdravje in okolje, ki bo spregovorila o gradnji trajnostne prihodnosti v knjižnicah. Urška Krajnc je strokovna sodelavka za trajnostni razvoj na Inštitutu za zdravje in okolje. Ukvarja se z vprašanji podnebnih sprememb in kakovosti zraka, ter se osredotoča na pomen strateškega komuniciranja pri naslavljanju omenjenih tem.
Hi, hello. So my name is Urška, as they already introduced me, and I'm here today maybe to talk a little bit more about technical things, so the things that you as libraries can do. So we will talk a little bit more about how to approach the carbon footprint theme, and also maybe to put a spin on it. I'm not sure if you've already heard of the term handprint. Yeah? Okay, great. So this will be also the last part of my presentation. So last summer, a little bit of a backstory. Last summer, me and Sasha, or our institute and their library, actually collaborated on writing a project. And when we were writing a project proposal, we were asking ourselves, what could libraries do in terms of sustainability to make a difference, to actually do something that it will show in the future. And of course, Sasha immediately said, we need to start calculating carbon footprint, but there is no calculator for libraries, right? So we were thinking of creating one for libraries only. But today, that's why I'm here, that's the backstory of it. But today I want to, start from the beginning. So, let me just, okay. So just to engage with you a little bit, throughout the presentation, you will answer some questions. No worries, it's not a test, it's not a knowledge exam. I just want to hear your thoughts, see your thought process. So maybe if you would be so nice, the ones that have smartphones, yeah, great. Scan the QR code. Vas bi pa prosila, če boste dali na... So what's one word that comes to mind when you think of libraries and sustainability? But it can be this conference, okay? Even though it's a really connecting point. But what is one thing? It can be either a problem, it can be either your view of what needs to be done. Okay, individual, interesting, future, society, reuse, library of seats, great. Okay, we see some solutions, we see some problems, we see some, okay, energy, society, okay. Open spaces, degrowth, okay. Social cohesion, yeah, that's something already, was already mentioned in the previous presentation. Engaging the community, agreed, that's where the handprint comes in. Economic development. Okay, so I think this shows, let's give it a few more seconds, but I think it shows the importance and variety of what sustainability means in libraries, right? I think it's a good loan, okay. Open spaces, knowledge, engaging the community, okay. Green society, okay, these are the topics we are actually doing today. Okay, we can move to the next one. Okay, I know you've already talked about, super. I know you already talked about sustainable development goals, we all know them, right? But I want to just ask you, to which SDGs you think your library contributes the most? Because I want to see how the SDGs are in your, okay?
Excuse me?
Yeah?
I can only select one.
Oh, really? Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Then one is okay. Just give one that is the most important, right? That's the... Aha. Bi lahko. Ste uspeli? Okay, we have 9 answers so far. There are a few missing, so please continue. Okay. Quality education is the first one, the most obvious one. Health and well-being. Okay, glad to see that one. Okay. Partnership. Okay. Reduced inequalities. Okay. Okay, justice and strong institutions. Okay, I think already so far we can see that you are involved in a variety of SDGs, right? So we can go back to the slides. Okay. Okay, so as we saw from practice, libraries contribute to multiple SDGs, not just the obvious one as quality education or reduced differences, but also to the ones that are involved with climate, right? And sustainability at its core, it's actually a library value, right? You're lending things. So it's a given, sustainability is actually in your core. But there are 2 sides of it, right? The one is that how your activities, and the first one is you as buildings, as your input as climate actors. So your public infrastructure, of course, this means that you also have some footprint, okay? And this also means that you're climate actors. So you contribute one way or another. We know that you contribute through quality education, but we need to also check in how do you do in environmental spectrum. So this is an opportunity to play a key role locally and nationally, of course, because we see how important citizen science is and also different projects. Okay, so I'm sure you're very familiar with the term carbon footprint, right? We all heard of it, we all know that it's there, we all know that we are making it. So we'll start with a little bit of theory. I want to introduce you a few methodologies you can use, and also we'll go through a tool that's maybe applicable for you to use. Okay, so carbon footprint. We know that this is total amount of all greenhouse gas emissions caused by individual, organization, as in libraries in this case, and projects. So we know that they're expressed in CO2 equivalents, but we need to talk here, when we talk also about the carbon footprint of libraries, in 3 scopes. Are you familiar with that? No? Okay, so greenhouse gas emissions are actually calculated or measured in 3 scopes. This is important, why? Because when you decide that you will measure the carbon footprint, you need to know what will you include, okay? And just for easier interpretation, scope 1, those are direct emissions from activities in your organization. So, for example, this library, it's heating, it's cooling, everything that it goes in organization itself. And then you have the scope 2 and 3, as you can see here. Scope 2 is always connected to indirect carbon emissions that are actually, they come from purchased energy and water. This is an important one to measure, because if you want to have an actual view of how much you use and what is your footprint, this needs to be included. And then we have the scope 3, which is other indirect emissions from products and services. Now, for libraries, this means also the carbon footprint or emissions that are made with your services. For example, for getting libraries when you buy them to the library. So it's the whole life cycle. Are you familiar also with that term, life cycle analysis? Okay, great. So this also includes that. And then on the other side of the carbon footprint, we have the handprint. Okay, so if I would ask you, what is the one thing that you think of when you, I don't know, decide that you will measure carbon footprint, what do you think it will mean for a library? What it will get you? Anyone? Yeah?
Raise awareness.
Okay.
Negative effect to the nature.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. And that's exactly the reason, because you can't manage what you don't measure, right? So you can't manage your environmental impact if you don't have the actual numbers, okay? If you don't know what is our footprint, you can't do anything about it, because everything you will do, you will not know what the effect will be, okay? So this is actually the basis point for you to make action, okay? Also, an important reason is, we all know that especially public libraries depends a lot on public funds, right? So if you want to, I don't know, get a fund to make a new wing or to make an adaptation, isolation, I don't know, it supports decision making, right? Because if you apply for funding or apply for a project, you get the application and you write, okay, right now our environmental footprint and carbon footprint is like that. We need funds to make it better because we leave a really big impact on environment, okay? So in practice, it supports decision making. It also enables goal setting, as said before, because it provides baseline for climate targets and reductions. So if you know our carbon footprint is like that, you can set a goal. So in your yearly plan or strategy, you can say, okay, until the year of, I don't know, 2000, you name it, we want to reduce the carbon footprint for 20%. Okay, this is our goal. How do we make it happen? Then the strategy comes, right? It also, as said before, strengthens funding and policy arguments, because you have concrete data to influence stakeholders, not just funds, but also different collaborators for projects, for different citizenship science project, or just like collaborations like we did in last summer. So it increases your transparency and credibility, because it shows it's an actual output of your doings and your concerns. So it means that you're doing something and you're aware of the impact you have, also environmental, right? So it identifies key emission sources, and also it has a saving potential. So it's not just for the public, it's also for you to realize where you can do better. Okay, so the carbon footprint calculation process, we've heard a lot about carbon footprint, but a few people know how to actually measure it, okay? Because it is complicated. There is a lot of standards, it is a lot of protocols. I know that broad public is not aware of all the GHG, ISO standards, and so on. So I'm here to just break it down a little bit to better understand how to go about it when, if you decide to measure carbon footprint. So the first step, and the most important, is to define methodology. We have a lot of standards, a lot of protocols, GHG protocol, ISO 14 standard. It gives you an idea and framework that you can work on, and it also manages your data, okay? So it shows you what you need to measure, how, and how to get the data. Of course, it's on you to set boundaries and scope. As said before, you need to, when you decide to start measuring carbon footprint, you need to decide, before gathering data, which scopes you want to include, okay? Because this depends on how much data you need to get and how hard it is to get the data. So this is an important part. But for starters, if you're not yet measuring carbon footprint, I really, really recommend that you start small. Start with scope 1, start with scope 2, because the scope 3, it is complicated and it can be really overwhelming. So you just need to start. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you know, it's a first step. The third step is collect data on emissions. So the data, of course, depends on the boundaries and scopes you previously decided to include. Then is the fourth step. It depends who will measure your carbon footprint, but it's always good to verify results because, as we know, as you will see later on, calculators can be a little bit tricky, and it's always good to have a set of eyes. And step 5, publish results. This gives you credibility, transparency. It means that public can know, okay, they know their carbon footprint, they're doing something. It shows immediate transparency. So those are the 5 steps that are needed in the process of measuring. Okay, so I really recommend using, of course, recognized standards. GHG protocol, ISO, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but on their website you have all the framework you need, all the information you need, and it will give you an outline how to approach. The second important step is to choose the right tool. Okay, you have 2 approaches you can have. The first one is actually online tools. They do exist. Here are 2 examples. Cool Climate and Carbon Trust. And the other option is Excel-based calculators. The thing is that organizations, it's easier for organizations actually to maybe use Excel-based calculators because it gives you an idea, especially in the first few rounds of measuring the footprint, what goes in, what it means, what data you input, and you also see behind the scenes. But it's important to use consistent data sets and units throughout the measurement, and also once, if you will be reporting or sharing information about your carbon footprint, it needs to be specified what was changed then from the previous measurement and so on. Because if you use another scope, if you use another methodology, the results can differ and they cannot be true actually if you included different data, right? Or different scope of data. So to conclude it, start simple and expand over time. Okay, we can go on. Okay, so I'm not sure if we have time, but I would like to show you an example of Excel tool calculator, just for you to better understand how it looks, what data you need, yeah, just to give you an idea that it's not that big of a deal, you can do it, and it's really, really not that overwhelming as it seems. So here are a few screenshots, but maybe we could just go to the webpage, is that possible? Okay, great. Zdaj pa kar po tools, orodja. Pa pod kalkulator. Razpadi, pa dajmo kar angleško verzijo. Okay, so majority of documents you will see, they start like that. Of course, you need to make your own copy, and then you have introduction to the tool. Maybe I can, okay, I think it will be easier. Okay, so you have everything you need to know to calculate your organization's carbon footprint is here, is written here. So to simplify it, it's not that hard. If it's in one Excel sheet, it means that it's not that much information as it seems in first glance. Okay, so you have all the formulas, for example, in this calculator, you have all the formulas already put in, so you actually just add your data, and it calculates automatically. Bear in mind that when we talk about carbon footprint calculators, it needs to be said that those are the general ones. You know, libraries have different and special needs in that way, because the scope 3 of your carbon footprint, it's actually really big and it's really hard to measure or include. So, but for the scope 1 and 2, the original calculators or the calculators that already exist are actually a really good fit. So it's really easy because everything is already calculated as in emission factors, so you don't need to search, you don't need to actually do anything besides gathering your data and including into the calculator. Okay, here is, for example, also the results. You get the results. So this would be an easy first step for you as organization to calculate it. So I don't know what are your thoughts? Is it less complicated once you see it in Excel, or yeah? Okay. You can go back to presentation. Okay, we all know for sure the first things that you can do before you can start measuring carbon footprint is to be aware of your actually needs and impact you're having. So there are a lot of things you can do from today to tomorrow that can make a change. For example, LED lighting, smart thermostats, natural ventilation, as already mentioned before, the events you can host, go digital, of course, recycle. I'm sure that you already have probably adopted some of the original or go-to things you can do to lower your carbon footprint. But if not, these are the things that you can easily do with no bigger investment. Okay, let's go on from where we stopped before. Pa če bi mogoče na tisti tretji strani odprla. Okay, super. Okay, just for my curiosity, does your library currently measure its carbon footprint? The laughter says it all. Okay. I don't know, okay. No. Well, that's not exactly inspiring, but also gives an opportunity to make a change, right? So that's not bad either.
That's why we try to be with a new calculator.
Yeah.
Because I do the results already.
Yes, I'm actually a little bit surprised. I thought that at least 20% of people would say, yes, we are measuring it, of course. Okay, I see that was naive thinking. Okay, I don't know. Okay. So basically, carbon footprint calculator is needed, and you need to start implementing the process. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. Okay, what is the biggest challenge your library faces in measuring its carbon footprint? Now that we know that no one measures it, what is the problem? Why not doing it? Why? What is the problem? What is the concern? Is it a knowledge problem? It's a resource problem? Anything that fits. Methodology, okay, I get that one. Collecting data, okay. Resources, not enough knowledge. Okay. Okay, you mean once before you put it in the calculator, or?
After, because we don't have specialists in libraries to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but the first thing is to start gathering and to make the calculations, right? And if you're not doing reports, are you doing also sustainability reports maybe? No? Okay. Then, for example, if you're not obliged to do a report on itself, it's not that big of a problem actually, because you can, as you saw before in the calculator, you do have results, right? So the results are actually written at the last Excel sheet. So you can use that to make sense out of it. And I think it's really, we can check it again later. Okay, get people to know what that is. Okay, lack of staff, lack of time, okay, understandable. Who will do it? Okay, get people to know what? Energy consumption, staff, education. Why to do it? Okay. Okay, if you listen to the first part of the presentation, we now know that if you don't measure things, you can't make change, right? If we don't know where you stand with carbon footprint, how will you do anything for your library in terms of lowering your environmental footprint? You don't know. If you don't know where you stand, you can't do action. So that's why to do it. because you need to know where you stand. Is it worthwhile the time, I guess? Methodology, people, no resource, data analysis, lack of awareness. Is that meant for inside the library, as in from staff, or in general? Okay. Okay. Energy consumption, resources. Okay, all understandable and all predictable, to be fair. We already addressed some of some of that before, and we can go on the last one, please. Okay, so how is your library actively working to reduce its carbon footprint? Share your initiatives. As we said before, there are a lot of things that you can or could be doing, and I just want to hear from you what is your stand currently, so we can see, and maybe also later on for discussion, see where you stand. So is there anything except or besides the projects you're doing, citizenship awareness, anything that comes to mind? It doesn't need to be correct, it's anything that you can think of.
For example, in the past, users wanted to have a copy, Xerox machine, and that means really important to carbon footprint, I think. They wanted pages. And let's say in the last few years, they prefer to be digital.
Okay, great.
So I think this is a cut of carbon footprint by not using
That many paper, yeah.
and in the same time books are not so damaged by exposing them to a very strong light.
Okay, that's a good spin.
This is an idea
Great.
for reducing the carbon.
Great, I agree. Applying as a case study in national project. Okay. Bring your own cup to the events. A great one. Incorporating sustainability projects. Okay. Waste management, recycling, working from home, LED lights, digitalization. Great. No single-use products for food, drink, less plastic on books, vegetarian food on meetings, cutting paper use. Great, okay. Those are great first steps. Okay. Bring your own. Maybe you can get some ideas now from different libraries of what you can do if you're not doing it yet. Okay, we can go maybe back to the presentation. Okay, as said before, there are two sides of it, right? It's carbon footprint from your organization and your library. It's your home, to say, and then it's the impact you have with your activities and services to people and how they can actually lower their carbon footprint. But to start with leveraging carbon data for green advocacy and funding, I think this is a really good push for, especially for the policymakers in your libraries to make decisions, because it can help get funding, because it's data that you need to, let's say, impress or show that you know what you're doing to decision makers. So you need to advocate for green policies that align with climate goals. We already talked about it before. You can secure funding by demonstrating long-term savings and community benefits. If you have the data, okay, right now our energy use is like that, we need funding to do that, and we expect that our use will, reduce for 20%, I think it's really convincing for policymakers and decision makers to maybe grant you funds or not reject project proposals. Okay. As I mentioned before at the beginning, there is another side of carbon footprint that we all know, but there is also the handprint. So is there, I think that somebody already said that they know what handprint is, right? Is there anyone that would want to share? No? Okay. Okay, so carbon handprint is actually positive climate impact. What does it mean in practice? Footprint is environmental harm, as we said before, so it's the impact that we're leaving on environment. But handprint is actually the benefit. So what we benefit with some actions that we're doing that would otherwise cause bigger carbon footprint. So libraries, at its core, they are creating handprints, right? As said at the beginning, you do have values and your services are actually to the core sustainability. So providing access to shared materials, promoting reuse over consumption, and supporting sustainability education and awareness. So you do have a big, big, big handprint. So just for an example, there was a Finnish study I stumbled upon when I was preparing the presentation. And actually they measured what is the carbon footprint of a book and their services and what is the handprint of their services. So just to get an idea, borrowing a book instead of buying, it says actually 0.7 kilogram CO2 equivalent per book, which is quite a lot if you multiply with all the users of libraries. Why is this important? Because it gives you not only credible data of the good things that you're doing, so your positive impact, but also it can help you with maybe, marketing is not the right word, but maybe positively engage society and maybe let them know the impact they are having with using your services. So you do have a big community impact because you educate, influence, and empower communities. So you can enable users to lower their also personal carbon footprint. Because with your services, for example, if I borrow a book in your library, I won't buy it. So therefore, I actually cut my personal carbon footprint by a lot. Okay, so to conclude this presentation, I just want to, maybe in line with the handprint, highlight the fact that you as libraries, as we've heard in the previous presentation, you do have a really big power, especially in the environmental awareness. How? Not only by your doings, but you can actually organize different activities. So there are a few of them, from climate awareness events, for example, in April, it's the Earth Month. It can be a discussion table, for example. You can create a green book club where discussions are around climate change, how people perceive it. You can collaborate with different friendly businesses. And you can actually, I don't know, for example, create green curriculum kits and teaching resources. So, for example, if a person is interested in climate change, you do have a go on, I don't know, education kit, or maybe also connect with schools with those kits. You can showcase climate-friendly improvements in the library. I think it gives the additional power to your voice. So there are a lot of things you can do. But to conclude, there are two sides of it, right? Environmental impact of your organizations as homes or as buildings, and then the carbon footprint or your positive impact you have on society. I really recommend you combine both approaches because it gives you the whole picture. But yeah, as we saw, I think you have a lot of planning to do and make, but I believe that you can make a lot of changes if you start implementing the things that we talked about and actually, yeah, make a positive change. That's it. Thank you.